It's time for Refresh the Cache, the Dynamics 365 Portals podcast on the CRM Audio Network, with your hosts, Microsoft MVPs, Nick Dolman, Colin Vermander, and Sean Tabor.
Maplytics by Inogic is a market-leading certified for Microsoft Dynamics 365 geo-analytical mapping app. Maplytics empowers users with powerful map visualization and routing capabilities with a dynamic CRM to drive better sales, improve business processes, and engage the right customers at the right time. Inogic is a leading Microsoft Gold Dynamics CRM ISV, delivering best-in-class Dynamics 365 solutions as well as cost-effective and high-quality programming services.
Welcome to another episode of Refresh the Cache. Last episode we came to you from Microsoft Ignite. This time we're coming to you live, well, on tape, from CRM UG Summit here in Phoenix, Arizona. It's a dry heat. And as always, I am Sean Tabor, your helpful navigator through this process. I don't call myself the host. That I leave up to my Canadian friends. And subtitle of this episode is Rotating Canadians, I guess, because last episode we had Colin Vermander, and this episode we have Nick Dolman. Nick, how you doing?
Doing awesome, Sean. Glad to be here down in sunny Phoenix. It's actually a pretty awesome show that's going on here with everybody, the crowd. And while we're here, pulled in a couple of friends in the Dynamics community that have some good portal experiences that they're going to share with us today. So I'm going to introduce you first to Sheila Shahpari. So Sheila, introduce yourself.
Hello, Sheila Shahpari. I'm CTO of Purita Group, customer engagement firm, specialized a lot in augmented intelligence. Do a lot of portal work as well.
So I'm going to pass it over to, of course, we have to have a high Canadian content for this podcast. Colin's not here this week. I'm sure he's sorry that he's not on the podcast. Maybe not sorry that he's here. But Colin, we're thinking of you, and hope to hear you. Hopefully you and I can get back together on the podcast in the next episode. I'm going to pass it over to Nicholas Hayduk. Hayduk, right?
Yep.
He's the president of Engineered Code. Nicholas has been doing portals for a long time, and he has some interesting insight. He has a great blog, a video series as well. And so I'm going to pass over to him to introduce himself so he can do a better job than I can.
Well, thanks, Nick. I appreciate you getting my name correct. Most people call me Nick Hayduk, so Hayduk, that's always a win. Again, I'm president of Engineered Code, and we focus almost exclusively on helping other partners and clients with portals implementations. I started with ADX Studio way back in the day in 2009, so that's where I started my career, and I've been kind of doing portals ever since. So super happy to be on the podcast today and hope to share maybe a little bit of the wisdom that I've earned through all the pain over the years.
All right, cool. So, well, first off, we'll talk a little bit about UG Summit for those of you who might be listening at home and thinking, yet another conference. So the User Group Summit, I did want to point that out. It is it's done by the user group communities, and it's cool. If you are a user of Dynamics 365 or an administrator or dealing it with any way, definitely check out the user groups. They have online forums, they have these conferences, they have webinars, a lot of learning sessions. It's a great way to ramp yourself up and share a lot of knowledge, give back. I love coming to this conference every year. You're dealing with folks that are living in the present, I would say. It's not about Microsoft where you're looking at the future. There's folks here that are still running CRM 2013 with ADX version 7 or even version 6, talking to those folks. So it's a great conference to really get ramped up fast and everything like that. It's I think, one of my favorite conferences. So the one thing in terms of portal news, the last episode with Dilip and Smith, I really wished I was there for that one. Dilip dropped a whole whack of news, and it just kind of blew my mind. Now, a lot of those answered the questions that I had. I prepared a whole big list of questions for Dilip for these guys, and they were great at. And I think Dilip actually answered the questions before they were asked for some of the things. So a lot of exciting stuff coming. Listen to that podcast, get caught up. But some of those things are beginning to actually surface on the portals this week. If you're using Dynamics 365 online portals, and you're the administrator, if you logged into a portal, you may have noticed that the little bar came up the top of the screen about the new user editing experience. It's pretty limited at this point, but it is actually showing up on customers' portals now, and it will allow you to do a little bit more. Well, the idea eventually will be drag and drop, but currently you can edit HTML content snippets to a certain extent, but it's kind of opening the doors for new stuff. So we'll keep on top of this in this podcast for sure as these new things are surfaced and lit up, and we'll kind of talk about, and we might, I know this might sound shocking, we may end up running into some challenges with that, and we'll hopefully provide some good knowledge to deal with that. Speaking of challenges, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it over to our guests. We're going to talk about some of the I guess, best practice tips of portal implementations, because the folks we have here have some experience with that. And it's always good to share that knowledge to help people doing portals for the first time. What are some roadblocks to avoid? And I've also asked them to kind of outline some portal implementation challenges and how they overcame them. So between Sheila and Nicholas, which one of you guys wants to go first? Or you want to? Oh, Sheila's waving. All right, so I'm going to hand it over to Sheila.
Stay pretty high level as far as best practice goes, in that in my experience, and I would love to hear Nicholas's input on it as well, but it's really in your best interest to work as much within the confines of the architecture and implementation as you can, versus thinking of it as kind of a fully matured CMS is kind of a lot of I think people may think that is what it is, but it's a little more lightweight than that, and understanding what the limitations are is clear. It's very, very important on the onset as you're making architectural decisions on how to actually construct your portals, versus assuming that it can do everything that any other kind of CMS or website can do when it's not intended for that.
Yeah, no, I'd certainly echo that. I know that when we were working on, back in the day, version 6 or version 7 implementations, we did a lot of corporate, good-looking websites on ADX Studio portals. And once Microsoft acquired the platform with version 8, it's, even Microsoft says it's not really meant to be your corporate website. It's meant to be a portal that allows you to expose your Dynamics data to external, or in the case of the employee portals, to other people that you don't necessarily want to give the whole CRM experience to, Dynamics experience to. So that's been a big shift. So people who have experience with ADX Studio Portals version 7, it was a little bit of there was some learning there to say, okay, well, we used to be able to, do projects like this, and now it's a different thing. So knowing what it does out of the box. The other thing that we run into a lot is there are a number of different types of portals. There's the partner portal, there's the employee self-service portal, customer portal. I find a lot of partners get into it and don't really look at what are all the features that come out of the box with those portals. And they either start with the starter portal, which has nothing in it, and they end up here, I'm going to build a help desk system. Well, you don't need to build your own help desk system. There's something there that's already started for you, and you can you work off of that. So I find that, because I know they're working on the documentation, but there's not a ton of documentation on, hey, here's how the partner portal works. There's a lot of people that really, to get to learn it, you just have to spin up a trial and go through it and figure it out. And I find that that's sometimes a step that's missing on a lot of partner implementations, is actually going through and figuring out what is Microsoft already invested in and what can we leverage from that.
So, in terms of that's great. I agree with that as well. It's I think the Dynamics 365 portals almost there's a lot of parallels between an actual Dynamics 365 implementation where you don't always necessarily have to code or do a lot of configuration. There are things available that we should utilize in terms of those first-party apps that might already be there. And of course, a lot more first-party apps are coming out. And they're also talking about the accelerators, which I think Smith touched on a little bit in the last episode. I think kind of portals kind of falls in line with that. Now, I'm going to actually I have more of a question for Nicholas here. Was reading his blog, and he kind of left a cliffhanger the last few weeks. So this is actually going to go deep into developers. So we're not going to start reading from the SDK. I learned about that George used to do that, but we're not going to go that deep. But we talk about, for those of you for you developers who are working on portals, and we're not really talking about the back-end development, which that's I think a topic for another day. But there is a lot of places where you can put JavaScript in terms of your portal. You can put some JavaScript in your entity list, your entity forms, your web templates on your web pages. And Nicholas has started writing a blog series about where is your code, and kind of left it at the cliffhanger at the very end of saying, well, there is a spot where you should put your JavaScript code, and that's for the next blog post. So Nicholas, do you want to give us a bit of a preview on that, or you want to leave that?
Well, I'm just happy that at least one person reads my blog, so that's good. No, I mean, I'm happy to share it. It'll get posted probably this week. It's already written, it's in the queue. But really, to me, I mean, the answer is all of those places have all of the spots that I've talked about, whether it's in the web pages or the entity forms or in snippets, all those have their place. But I always like to put it in the most specific place possible. So if we're talking about an entity form, there's the JavaScript field on the entity form. If you think about putting that entity form in multiple places, does that JavaScript apply to all the places you're going to put that entity form? If so, then you should put it in that entity form. One of my pet peeves is copying and pasting of code. So if you put all of your JavaScript in the web page entity on the advanced area for the JavaScript for the web page entity, and you put that entity form in two different places, you end up copying and pasting that JavaScript. Well, why would you do that? Like, put it on the entity form if you can. That's always been kind of what I always kind of recommend. I also kind of get into, there's other places other than just in those in the Dynamics data to put it. You can put references to scripts that are hosted other places and that sort of thing. But again, my general rule of thumb is put it somewhere so you don't have to copy it multiple times. So generally that would be putting it within the entity form logic or the entity list logic, again, assuming that it makes sense that everywhere you'd put that it applies.
So I'm going to take I actually don't disagree with that. I'm going to say what I do, and of course, we were told from some listener feedback. George Dubinsky said that as Canadians are always too polite to each other, and there's no big controversy and things like that. So, what I do in my portal projects actually, and I'm just curious what some of the other takes would be on this, is I actually put my JavaScript in the web templates because I always know where I can find it. And within the web templates, I can do the reuse as well because I can reference other web templates that have JavaScript. So it's kind of said that because Canadians are always too polite to each other, and there's no big controversy and things like that. So what I do in my portal projects actually, and I'm just curious what some of the other takes would be on this, is I actually put my JavaScript in the web template as opposed to, like, I think what Nicholas, you're running hunting around for everywhere where it goes. Any retort to that or feedback?
No, I like that. I find the web templates area is something that sometimes people who don't know what they're doing can get into that area. So if you put in that, because there's also HTML, there's also HTML in that area. So it's like people who think that they know HTML. A lot of people think they know HTML. There's fewer people who think that they also know JavaScript. So the web templates can kind of leave you open to, that's there, and let me play with that. So, but that keeping that in mind, that's a good strategy too. Maybe I'll have to update my blog post before it goes out and include that in there.
Cool. I didn't want to derail you, but definitely a good discussion, and hopefully the developers out there are getting a bit of that good content. Definitely want to keep it to the also the administrators and the users of the portals. I'm gonna ask Sheila, have you seen or read the release notes for the new features coming on portals? Yep. She's nodding yes. So I'm just curious of there's just a very quick recap, because we did talk about in this episode 1. There's the Power BI integration. There's the SharePoint. there's the front end features of those things, and plus Delete dropped a whole bunch of other things that are coming down the road in the future. I believe you talked about sandbox portals, portals running on CDS, which I'm really excited about. Sheila, do you have, in the terms of the future portals, what's your take, and what are you excited about?
A lot of the stuff that's coming out in this next October release is cool. I think some of the future state stuff that's coming out after that are the really cool things with like the sandbox instances and stuff like that. I'm happy to see the SharePoint integration finally kind of becoming a first party. That's been a pain point of many customers so far. Same for embedding Power BI. That's going to be really great for end users.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, for sure. The SharePoint thing, I'm excited about. I think I'm safe to say I've been actually being able to look at the preview for that, and it seemed to be pretty straightforward to set up and stuff. So when that does get released, and probably very soon, from what I understand, it's definitely going to address a lot of needs that people have been developing a lot of code to address, or waiting on, or using other methods. So I think that's a pretty exciting feature. The Power BI one too. To be quite honest, I'm not a Power BI person. Actually, this is actually one thing at UG Summit. I actually went to an introduction to Power BI session this morning, and I learned a lot of really cool stuff. And I realized it's one of those things that I can begin to ramp up on. We talked about the new features. I'm going to turn it back over to Nicholas for a couple minutes and say, and I believe you're on the preview program as well, right? I think we're allowed to say that. But just what are some of the things that you like that's coming up?
For the record, if we weren't allowed to say that, I haven't said it yet, but Nick Dolman has, so just put that on the record. There were a few features that we did get to play with as part of that. The SharePoint thing is, it's awesome compared to what, having to do it yourself, or buying an add-on or something like that. And it works super slick. Like it's easy to set up. It allows you to view documents, upload documents, delete documents, all controlled by entity permissions. It's really very similar to the SharePoint integration we saw with the version 7. So, it's a great replacement. I know there were some technical reasons underneath the hood why it took so long. I think they were kind of waiting on something from the SharePoint side of things. I'm glad it finally came about. So, and I'm kind of in the same boat with regards to Power BI. I've got some team members that know it actually quite a bit better than I do. But my kind of first experience setting up Power BI was the other day, so that I could try the new the capabilities in the preview instance that we had access to. So, that's it's using kind of iframe technology to put the Power BI dashboards or reports on the page. So it's you kind of know what the interface is going to look like if you're familiar with Power BI. But there's some cool stuff you can do with URL filtering and that sort of thing. So I think that's a great feature. But honestly, what I'm most excited about is the whole CDS thing. Now that we know that in the near future, you can turn on a portal for a CDS organization. Like, I think that's going to be great. Like, that's going to be a game changer for a lot of people who wanted to implement CDS. The portal, is a huge component. Obviously, we're big believers in the portal, and we think that adding that type of capability to CDS is going to be huge for people who are wanting to implement their apps in CDS, but still need to have that kind of external audience engagement.
Cool. So I think we're probably running close to time here, unless you guys have anything really burning to add to this conversation. And definitely we'll invite you guys back again sometime, because I think this is a great conversation today. Learning a lot. And in case anybody is out there, if you want to learn portals, I'm actually going to be teaching a portals boot camp in Oslo, Norway, in the first week in November. So if you are looking for a nice sunny vacation, probably not where you want to go. However, if you want to learn about portals, no sense going outside anyway. We're going to be doing it indoors. Shout out to Marius Lind, the CRM Viking, who organized that. So looking forward to seeing some of you in Norway, and we'll teach you about portals, the setup. Just hope kind of expanding your already Dynamics 365 experience. And then we'll be kind of moving on, and I'll be attending Dynamics 365 Saturday in Stockholm the weekend after as well. And I believe I have a session on portals there as well. So if you happen to be in the area of Norway or Sweden the first week of November, definitely come by and say hi.
This has been Refresh the Cache, the Dynamics 365 Portals podcast from CRM Audio. Check out this and other podcasts at crm.audio. If you have any questions about portals for the team to answer, please send them to voice@crm.audio. You can subscribe to the CRM Audio network of podcasts on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, TuneIn, Spotify, or any place else to find podcasts are offered. This is a production of Dynamics Podcast, LLC.